Hyder, for having to come out to another meeting. I think y'all were out 2 times last week, and I'm sorry that you're having to come out. Has become an urgent issue, and given the condition of the sinkhole out there, I will say this, that we took measurements when we were out there about 5 weeks ago. Since that time, we had, or Angie and Chris had Nick go out and remeasure it late last week. It's grown 2 feet in one direction and 4 feet in another direction. To me, that's a pretty quickly accelerating hole, and I think, given the circumstances, it's becoming a threat to public health, safety, and welfare. And I don't say that lightly. We've done a significant amount of evaluation to come to that conclusion. I want everybody to know that I would not recommend that if I didn't think it was essential and necessary. So what, in essence, we've done is to try to accelerate the process. We've gone ahead, and I think you should all have in front of you 2 things. One is a preliminary cost estimate, and the second thing is a preliminary schedule for accomplishing all of the work that needs to be done there. Angie, does everybody have that?
They didn't bring them.
Not, but I'm passing it around.
Okay. We have tentatively estimated this at around $200,000, and I believe that's a not to exceed cost. We hope is never a plan, but it's our hope and thought that it could come in somewhat less than that, but I want us to plan and budget for that amount. I've talked to 2 different contractors. I've gone over the details of what we're doing. Both of them agree that we're in the ballpark, if not maybe a little over. But let me explain real quickly what we're going to do. In order to stop this from migrating beyond where it is, we've got to do a number of things. One, we've got to fix the problem with water getting access to these sites. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to put a geomembrane down. Y'all have all seen these before. It's a much hardier version of something you might put on a flower bed at your house to keep weeds from coming up through it. But it does provide some structural strength. It controls the amount of water that goes through it. It doesn't allow it to pour through, but filter through slowly, so it doesn't continue to erode the soil. And it kind of creates a barrier there to protect and solidify what's there. On top of that, we'll put riprap, and all of y'all know what riprap is. And then we'll put what's called a choker stone over the top of that to help provide some sort of structural integrity to help hopefully support everything that has to happen in that hole. We're going to put a what's called an area drain with a box, a stormwater box in there. It'll have a grate in the top of it. It'll also have the 2 pipes that come under the road will connect into that box, and then on the outside of the box, the lines going on across the Phillips Petroleum side will connect those back into this new box. The box will have a foundation, a firm foundation underneath it. It'll come up to right at the ground surface. We'll, on top of the choker, we'll backfill the entire thing up with the choker stone up to about, a foot or so, where we'll put another membrane down, again, to help retard the access of water into that sinkhole. We'll put topsoil over that, and then seed and sow around that entire area. Again, we've proposed an area that's about 20 by 20. Right now, I believe the hole is roughly 16 by 18 or 16 by 20. there'll be a little bit of excavation they have to do to clean it up to be able to get in there and get the membranes in the way we need to, and to backfill with the stone the way that we need and want to. That should provide stability to that area and stop the progress of that sinkhole. Is everybody with me? Does anybody have any questions about that?
We kind of disagree.
I mean, where's that water gonna go once it gets, they put that box in there?
It's connecting back in to the existing stormwater system.
Right.
The bigger project, the one that we talked about last week, will reroute the existing stormwater kind of out from underneath the Phillips Petroleum's building. It ultimately will go across their side and discharge out at the same location that it discharges now. And I think we talked about this last week. As y'all probably know, the West Tennessee River Basin has already been out there, and they've sort of scoured and dredged that whole area so that we can make sure that all of the water that flows through the Phillips site, both surface water and water that's piped through the storm drainage system, has a way to escape that site now and ultimately drain all the way down to Cypress Creek. So the bigger project, once we get to that, will help. We'll take it again from that box and around the Phillips side and replace the pipe that's there now. But for now, all we're doing is connecting the drain that comes under the road to the box, and then from the box connect back into the existing system until we can get the bigger money to replace the rest of the system. The goal is to stop the progress of the sinkhole. This project constitutes an emergency because it does threaten public health and safety. And that's what we're limiting the scope to right now, is to stop the progress of this sinkhole.
I mean, I would say no. I mean, not that I have to say, but that's a fix now.
Right.
But I mean, long term, I'm worried about you allow more water to come through there. I mean, just dredging that ditch out, we've dropped that pond by 3.5 feet, and I'm not sure that is what made that sinkhole bigger. Now it's free flowing.
Angie, I'm not sure I'm catching all of that conversation.
So, is it Al? Alden, this is Todd. So, when we dredged that out, when West Tennessee, and I apologize if I chopped the name, brought their track hoe in there and dug that out, they've dropped that water level about 3.5 foot, because now it's got a place to go. And I'm telling you, it's pulling sediment now, and I think it's free flowing, which twofold, I think we had back pressure before that was leaving some of that there, and now that free flows, I think we're pulling more of it. So I mean, I'm not saying this plan will work, but I guess I would like to know what interval we would do the next step, because I think it's gonna be inevitable. You put that in and it's just gonna continue to wash. I mean, you fixed the problem there, but what about the other, I don't know, 2,000 feet of pipe?
Yeah, thanks, Todd. Again, that goes back to what I was saying before. The rest of the solution is about $1.8 million. That's why we're applying for the American Rescue Plan Act competitive grant to access the funds that are necessary to go in then and retroactively replace all of the balance of that stormwater system that's on your property, to ensure that there's all of the pipe, all of the service is new pipe with strength and integrity to support it for the next 40 or 50 years at least, and remedy the problem that's being caused there right now permanently. Your next question probably ought to be, what's the time frame for getting that done?
Well,
I'm assuming that's where you were going with that, correct?
I guess my ask is I just want to get something going, because I mean, we dropped that building into a sinkhole and we're done. I can tell you right now, we're done.
Well, what we're doing,
now.
what we're proposing to do with this project will stop the sinkhole from spreading anymore.
What's the timeline on the next project that we're trying to get the grant money for?
All right, the grant applications are due August the 8th. We're working with the Southwest Tennessee Development District, and we've given them a lot of information already to get that application submitted. Y'all voted last week, I believe, to go ahead and pursue that funding. Once the application goes in, they've got a pretty detailed review process that they've got to go through. They've learned a lot of valuable lessons from the non-competitive grant about what not to do. They will receive a lot fewer applications on this grant round than they did on the last. Last time, they had nearly 1,000 projects that were submitted that they had to review. This time, they think they'll receive less than 100, fewer than 100. So the review process probably is going to take them about through end of October, maybe middle November. Could be beyond that, depending on the staff restrictions. Then they'll start the same process they did with this, vetting each project that they're going to award, extending the offer contract, which would go to Selmer. And then they're partnered with one of the big four accounting firms, Ernst & Young, and Ernst & Young will do what they call a risk mitigation meeting. Selmer's gone through that already for their non-competitive grant that they've got. Once they have that issued, they'll authorize release of the funds. If let's say, for example, that process starts and they review all the grant applications and decide to award this one, and it is in fact mid-November, that probably would take a month. So they would authorize expenditure of funds probably sometime in mid-December, maybe late December, according to their current schedule. Now, again, that's subject to change. It's a state agency. They've already got a lot of demands on their time. That may be optimistic on their part. I don't want to mislead anybody. And I'm telling you, all of these dates are very tentative right now, other than the schedule that we've got for spending this money that we're talking about tonight with the emergency fund.
So will they use this existing fix with the new next step in the project? I mean,
This is the first step in that process. This is the total project is a $2 million project. This is a $200,000 component of that. But because of the urgency and the threat to the public safety on this one, it constitutes an emergency, and it's funds that Selmer will have to spend out of their own pocket with no opportunity for recovery out of reserve funds to fix this issue.
Can I ask something?
I'm not sure who it is, but anybody can ask anything, I suppose. It's at the board's discretion.
Well, being a board member, I'd like to ask you something. I see the date is the 21st of September. What is your plan B if it started washing more like the other fellas talking about, or increase?
Here's the problem. if we get authorization to proceed, part of this is completely dependent on two things. One is a contractor mobilizing to the site to get started. The second is, which we can negotiate with contractors to get pricing based on we have to define a very clear scope of service so that everybody's giving us pricing on exactly the same thing. So we're putting plans and specifications together for that now, so that we'll have it ready. If y'all authorize it, we want to have it ready as soon as possible to go out and visit with meet with contractors, go over it with them, and get their pricing in. Once this board authorizes them to begin work, they've got to order materials. That can be an issue. Getting riprap and choker stone and geotextile, I don't think that's going to be the problem. Getting the box, maybe. We've talked to different manufacturers' reps for pre-stressed concrete boxes, and they're telling us that could be potentially a 6 to 9 week order time. Well, okay, if you put 6 to 9 weeks on from the first week of August, that puts us back to the middle of September. So, okay, let's say that, for example, something happens and they don't get the box to the middle of December. All of the other work can still be going on, getting the foundation, getting the geotextile down, getting the riprap down, getting the choker stone in on top of it, getting the foundation ready. Everything can be ready so that when that box is delivered, we can set the box in place, fill around it, put the top layer of geomembrane on, backfill with soil, and that process won't take, it'll be less than a week.
Is it a local contractor, or is it outside?
It would, well, I mean, it's probably not somebody that is in Selmer right now, but close by. There's one contractor that's over in Savannah that can do it. There's a contractor in Parsons that can do it. There's a contractor actually two contractors in Corinth, Mississippi that can do it. They all hold licenses in Tennessee, obviously. That would be one of the prerequisites. And a number of others. I mean, there's 3 or 4 in Jackson that can do it. So we've got access to a number of good, licensed, certified contractors who have specific experience in this type of work.
Alton, this is JT speaking.
Yeah, hey, JT.
Is the box something that we can order on the front end and have the contractors bid labor and all other materials than the box? That way
Yes,
we can go ahead and start
we
that
can.
ball rolling.
Yeah, that's a great question, and yes, we can do that. The difference sometimes is they tend to be a lot more responsive and give higher priority to people who buy from them all the time than they do a city or a county.
What's the time frame they said to do this?
There's a schedule that y'all should have access to that we sent down last week. I think both Angie and the mayor have copies of it. Look at that schedule. Angie, do you have a copy there?
Yeah, the last date, you've got completion date for construction is September 21st.
Yeah. So we still think that's an achievable date.
Any other questions?
Oh, and by the way, I think the last question was from Willie. Willie, thank you for that question. And JT.
Mr. Robert, do you have anything to say or a question or anything?
Well, the industrial development board is certainly very interested in this matter. We want to see Phillips 66 made whole in this project. We understand it's not going to happen overnight, nothing like this ever does. We also recognize that it is the city of Selmer's responsibility things that have to be done and the cost of what those things will be, and also the timeline for completion. I don't mean to be trite at all when I say this, but we've all heard the definition of insanity, that it is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. So if we continue to debate this matter, it'll be September, and we still will not have made a decision. I certainly do not have the technical expertise to advise anyone in this matter. I have to trust and rely upon people who have that ability, and I think Alvin Heathcote has that ability. And I think the plan that he has presented, we have to have confidence that it will accomplish what it is that Alvin is proposing it will accomplish. And we recognize it's not a permanent fix to the entire situation,
Right.
but it will buy us time to get through the grant application process and hopefully awarding of the grant and moving forward with the remainder of the fix that will be done as rapidly as possible. So, I hope the board will take action tonight and will see fit to go forward with this plan and implement it as expeditiously as you possibly can.
Thank you.
Alton, I have a question. Once we get the box in place and we start fixing that hole up, can Todd start filling them voids underneath this building as soon as that is done?
Sure. There's nothing to stop Todd from doing that now. Although I agree with what he said, once this gets connected, right now I think the site is experiencing runoff from any rainfall event that gets into that existing system and escapes the pipes and creates, I think what's happened over time is when we had the flood in 2019 and it silted in everything back up along the railroad tracks through what used to be a pretty good drainage way, and it also caused all the silt to deposit in the existing lines. We know that. Those lines were already not in good shape, as Todd can attest to, because they had to spend, I think, Todd, you said $1.2 million fixing and replacing what failed a couple of years ago. The new line that we're putting in will replace all of that old, I think, deteriorated pipe, and it'll be on a slope that should keep constant velocity through that line. And as long as that drainage way that goes along the railroad tracks doesn't get obstructed again, it should drain and drain freely across that site without being impeded. We do need to be careful, and we also need to be observant and watch that drainage way as it escapes the Phillips site and gets over there next to the railroad tracks to make sure that doesn't silt in again over time, and continue to work with the West Tennessee River Basin to make sure that thing stays clear and cleaned out so that everything that drains from that entire drainage basin and across Phillips site can get out and escape and get all the way down to Cypress Creek without being impeded or held back.
But, so, just so I'm clear, there's no pipe in this first stage. This is a manhole and gonna tie into the old pipe, right?
Yes.
That's not gonna work.
Well, I mean, it'll work the way it is today, other than it'll stop the sinkhole from deteriorating.
Right, but that's,
Yeah, I mean,
That's not
the
correct.
sinkholes, we gotta get that fixed.
Got to get
The
this sink
the second stage of this will divert all the water around the building and backfill, correct me if I'm wrong, Alton, backfill the pipe that runs under the building. So
It'll replace, oh yeah, I'm sorry, yes. That'll be filled back in with flowable fill, which is basically wet concrete, wet cement. It'll be filled up so that it doesn't create a chasm underneath there that could collapse in the future.
we just got to get enough money to do that.
Sure.
Band-aid it
That's
now,
what we're
get
waiting
the
for.
grant through, and then fix everything the way it needs to be fixed.
So maybe I shouldn't be asking this question now. So we don't get the grant, what do we do then?
That was my plan B answer that I asked. What if that didn't work? What would be your next alternative? Hoping the first one will.
Yeah.
Like you said, you believe in what they do, but what if?
Are you confident about the
Yeah.
grant, Alton?
No, I mean, we shouldn't be. I mean, again, I've talked to a number of different administrators about how many applications they're working on. I've also talked to them about how many of them are good. But and there could be a lot that go in. I've specifically talked to the program manager for this program about this project. She clearly understands its importance. It's going to be classified as a hazard mitigation project, and if we do, it takes a lot of people to make one of these work and to be successful. It takes a lot of documentation and preparation and justification. I don't know who our competition is. So, look, I don't want to get in the business of predicting the future. I know we're going to work our tails off to put a really, really good, strong application in. And I've probably only done 500 or 600 applications for state and federal projects in my career. Surely by now I've got enough knots on my head to know what they're asking for and what constitutes a good justification for a project. But I'm telling you, you never know. Once it gets to them, it's all subject to their review discretion. I will say this, the economic component of this hasn't escaped them. We're trying to make a strong case about that specifically. And I will also say any help from elected officials, state level elected officials, might make a difference.
Andy, you could speak to this much better than I, but if we assume the worst case scenario, that we are not awarded the grant, there is the possibility that the city could choose to treat this as a capital outlay and could expend it, or expense it rather, over a multi-year period at a reasonable rate of interest. So there is a workaround on that I think the city could put in place even if the grant is not awarded, and I would assume that
Yeah.
you would see the importance
Yes.
in doing that and moving forward in that fashion if the grant is not awarded.
Yeah.
That is correct, yeah. And did you hear what he said, Alton?
I did, and Angie and I have talked about exactly that scenario. There's obviously good and bad to that. The bad is you got to pay it back. And I know that y'all just had a property tax increase. Angie would know better than anybody what the finances, the projected finances look like, and approximately what that kind of debt would do to any surplus that you might have expected. There is a bright side to that. If the worst case scenario is we don't get funded, there's two good components to this. Whatever we do will happen more quickly because we don't have to wait for their reviews and approvals, and probably less expensively because we don't have some of the federal boat anchors that are tied to this. But make no mistake, getting a $1.8 to $1.9 million grant to fund a $2 million project is worth the wait and worth the effort.
Gentlemen, do y'all have anything about that? I think
What needs to be voted on tonight?
the.
To move forward with the expenditure for the emergency
200,000.
improvement.
To approve him to move forward with the
200,000.
project.
I move to approve for him to move forward with the project.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Whichever, John,
Okay.
whichever. Get it going.
Do we need to talk about the general fund or capital outlay?
Two separate things.
Two separate things, okay. Okay. Any questions or anything? Miss Ann?
John and Willie both seconded, that doesn't matter.
It don't-
It don't matter.
John Austin.
Yes.
John Phillips.
Yes.
J.P. Hawkins.
Yes.
Johnny Norris.
Yes.
Willie Sines.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, Alton, I'm gonna take you off the phone call now because we're gonna be talking about something else as far as the funding, okay?
Okay, that'd be great. Listen, thanks everybody. I appreciate your time, and anybody that's got a question, I'm glad to answer it at any time. I appreciate the chance to be with y'all. Thank you.
Now, I guess you have in front of you your funding analysis, so look over that. And I guess, Angie, if you want to explain.
Yeah, what we did last week when we knew that we were gonna have to come up with $200,000 is we talked with Scott Gibson with Cumberland Securities, who is the one that basically does all of our financial things. And he surprisingly said that if we did a capital outlay note for that amount, that he had no qualms in saying that we could get it at around 4%, which surprised me. But he said that with the amount of money, and you can do a capital outlay note anywhere from 1 to 12 years. He estimated this one just because of the amount of it at a 5-year period of time, because there's really not a reason to go out 12 years for $200,000, but that is an option. But what we needed tonight was permission for him to send out requests for proposals from that list of banks, and he's got the letters ready. He's just waiting on y'all to approve him to look into that for us, and then he would handle everything. He would handle the receiving the bids and all, and he would have everything ready for when y'all met on the 8th of August, so that you could approve him moving forward. So he would have everything ready and done by August the 8th.
Okay, I think that's, any questions?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Norris, and second by J.T. Hawkins. Any questions? Miss Ann?
John Norris.
Yeah.
John Phillips.
Yes.
J.P. Hawkins.
Yes.
Johnny Norris.
Yes.
Willie Sines.
Yes.
Motion carried.
So we've got the approval of Alton and the approval of our, either going to do capital outlay and our funding. Is there anything else that needs to be? That's it?
Yep.
All right. All right. Motion to adjourn. Thank y'all.